There is something profoundly strange unfolding in our solar system right now. A persistent signal is being broadcast through the vastness of space. For weeks we have been receiving these transmissions from the interstellar object you may already know, Comet 3I Atlas. We do not yet understand the full meaning of this signal nor its purpose. We cannot even confirm with absolute certainty that it is an artificial transmission. However, if it proves to be so, this moment would mark the first time in human history that we have detected a deliberate transmission from an object entering our celestial neighborhood. And this transmission is happening right now, at this very moment, on a frequency immediately recognizable to astronomers worldwide, 1420 MHz. The story begins on October the 21st, 2025, when a research team monitoring 3I Atlas reported an unexpected discovery. They had detected a stable sequence of pulses emanating from the object's position in space. The pattern was unmistakably clear, 6 numbers repeating. The signal was simultaneously picked up by multiple observation stations separated by over 9,320 miles, effectively ruling out instrument error, interference, or mere coincidence. What remained was the tantalizing possibility that we were witnessing the most significant discovery in the history of astronomy. The team cautiously shared their findings, posting the data to a restricted astronomy server and labeling it anomalous, not as definitive proof. They awaited confirmation. Within 48 hours it arrived. Independent observatories in Chile, Australia, and South Africa all reported identical observations, a repeating pulse at 1420 MHz, originating from the exact coordinates of 3I Atlas. The sequence was stable, precise, and undeniably deliberate. Before delving further, it is crucial to understand the significance of 1420 MHz. This frequency resides at the edge of the microwave spectrum. It is the natural emission line of neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. When hydrogen atoms transition between energy states, they emit radiation at precisely this frequency. In 1959, physicists Joseph Carter and Arthur Jenkins proposed that any intelligent civilization attempting interstellar communication would likely choose this frequency. Why? Because it is universal. Any species capable of radio astronomy would recognize it immediately. It became known as the water hole because it sits between the spectral lines of hydrogen and hydroxyl, the two components of water, creating a quiet region of the radio spectrum relatively free from cosmic noise. For decades, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has been scanning this frequency range, listening for signals. Until now, they had found nothing conclusive. Let us be clear about what this signal is not. It is not a message in human language. It is not a series of images or complex mathematical proofs. It is not a greeting or a warning. It is a pattern, 6 numbers repeating at regular intervals, 813, 85, 13, 8. These numbers are not random. They adhere to a very specific mathematical sequence, one that recurs throughout nature, mathematics, the structure of galaxies, and even DNA. They follow the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is elegantly simple. You begin with 0 and 1, and every subsequent number is the sum of the 2 preceding ones. This pattern manifests in the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, the branching of trees, and the cosmic structure of galaxies. It is a mathematical signature that describes growth, efficiency, and natural design. And it is precisely what we are observing in the signal from 3I Atlas. The numbers 5, 8, and 13 are consecutive Fibonacci numbers. The pattern 813, 85, 13, 8 is not a random jumble. It is a deliberate arrangement, a structure that any mathematician would instantly recognize. This recognition is vital because if one attempts to transmit a signal across interstellar space and wishes to prove its artificial origin, one would encode it with something unmistakable: mathematics. Here is what we know so far. First, the signal is real. Multiple observatories have confirmed its presence. Second, the signal is stable. It repeats at consistent intervals, unaffected by the object's rotation or trajectory. Third, the signal is intelligent. It adheres to a mathematical pattern found throughout nature and advanced algorithms. Fourth, the signal originates from 3I Atlas. Its source coordinates precisely match the object's position. There are several ways to interpret this. One interpretation suggests the signal is a natural phenomenon, something we do not yet comprehend but is ultimately explainable through physics. Another interpretation posits that the signal is deliberate, designed, an attempt at communication by someone or something. And there is a third interpretation one researchers are carefully considering, that the signal is a transmission from the object itself, suggesting that 3I Atlas is not merely a comet, but something entirely different. Let us rewind for a moment and discuss what 3i Atlas actually is. On July 1st, 2025, the Atlas Survey Telescope in Chile detected a new object moving through our solar system. Its velocity was extreme and its trajectory hyperbolic. Within days, astronomers confirmed their initial suspicion this was an interstellar visitor. 3. I-Atlas became the third confirmed interstellar object to enter our solar system, following Oumuamua in 2017 and 2I Borisov in 2019. However, 3i Atlas is distinct. It is larger, faster, and far more active than its predecessors. From its initial detection, 3i Atlas exhibited unusual behavior. Oumuamua was inert with no coma tail or outgassing. It was a dark, elongated object tumbling through space. 2i. Borisov conversely behaved like a typical comet displaying a bright coma and a long tail releasing gas and dust as it approached the Sun, a predictable celestial body. 3i Atlas is neither. I-Atlases. It possesses a coma and a tail, but the coma's composition is peculiar. The tail's behavior is irregular, and the object itself is emitting materials previously unseen in a natural comet. Let us examine the data point by point. Early estimates place 3i Atlas's diameter at approximately 3.1 miles, making it significantly larger than Oumuamua, which was about 0.25 miles across and larger than Borisov, about 0.62 miles. However, as observations continued, this measurement fluctuated. Some suggested the nucleus could be as large as 3.5 miles, others as small as 0.2 miles. This variation is highly unusual. Typically, comet measurements converge and uncertainty shrinks over time. With 3i Atlas, the uncertainty grew. This was because the object's brightness changed in patterns inconsistent with standard cometary behavior. It was not merely brightening as it approached the Sun, it fluctuated unpredictably. This suggested something more complex than a simple icy nucleus reflecting sunlight. In August 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope focused its instruments on 3i Atlas. Its findings were surprising. The coma, the glowing cloud of gas and dust surrounding the nucleus, was predominantly carbon dioxide, not water vapor or methane. While comets do contain carbon dioxide, water is usually the dominant volatile, with a typical ratio of about 8 parts water to 1 part carbon dioxide. In 3i Atlas, this ratio is reversed, approximately 8 parts carbon dioxide to 1 part water. This is exceptionally unusual, suggesting 3i Atlas formed in an extremely cold carbon-rich environment, perhaps in the outer reaches of a protoplanetary disk, around a star vastly different from our Sun. But there is something even stranger in the coma nickel. In September 2025, the Very Large Telescope in Chile detected spectral lines corresponding to nickel vapor in 3i Atlas's coma. Nickel vapor in comets is not unprecedented. A 2021 study found trace amounts of nickel and iron in several comets within our solar system. The crucial difference here is that nickel and iron almost always appear together. They form in the same stellar processes, condense in the same regions of protoplanetary disks, and remain associated. In 3i Atlas, astronomers detected significant amounts of nickel, approximately 4 grams per second, being released into space, yet they detected no iron. This is unprecedented. There is no known natural process that would produce nickel without iron in a cometary environment. Unless, of course, the nickel is not originating from natural processes at all. Let us consider the significance of nickel in an industrial context. On Earth, nickel is extensively used in manufacturing a key component of stainless steel batteries and high-temperature alloys for aerospace applications. One particular nickel compound is especially relevant: nickel tetracarbonyl. This volatile toxic gas is used in nickel refining, produced by reacting nickel metal with carbon monoxide under specific conditions. It is employed in industrial processes to create high-purity nickel coatings and has never been observed in nature, until now. Spectroscopic analysis of the 3i Atlas coma suggests the presence of nickel tetracarbonyl. To be absolutely clear, this detection is not definitive. The spectral lines are faint and analysis is ongoing. Multiple research teams are working to confirm or refute this finding. But if confirmed, it would be extraordinary because nickel tetracarbonyl does not form naturally in space. It requires specific temperatures, pressures, and chemical precursors that simply do not exist in a cometary environment. So how did it get there? One possibility is a misinterpretation of data that the spectral lines we observe are from another similar molecule. Another is an unknown natural chemical process within the coma involving nickel-bearing dust, carbon monoxide, and solar radiation. Then there is the third possibility, one that is harder to dismiss, that the nickel tetracarbonyl is present because something manufactured it. Let us discuss the tail. In July and August 2025, astronomers observing 3.1 Atlas noticed something peculiar. The object possessed a tail, but it pointed in the wrong direction. Normally a comet's tail points away from the sun, formed by the solar wind pushing gas and dust away from the nucleus. It always points away from the sun. All years, always. Except for 3I Atlas. For weeks its tail pointed toward the sun. This phenomenon, an antitail, is not entirely unknown. A few comets have displayed antitails, usually as an optical illusion. However, 3I Atlas's antitail was not an illusion. It was a genuine jet of material, gas and dust streaming from the nucleus toward the sun. The jet was narrow-focused and persistent. By September it had vanished. In its place a conventional tail emerged, pointing away from the sun as expected. What happened? One explanation suggests the antitail resulted from the early sublimation of carbon dioxide ice on the sun-facing side of the nucleus. As the comet warmed, frozen carbon dioxide pockets beneath the surface expanded and burst outward, creating a directed jet that would naturally point toward the sun due to intense heating. Over time, as the object approached perihelion and heating became more uniform, the jet activity shifted, the coma expanded, and a conventional dust tail formed. This natural explanation aligns with the cometary physics, but there is another explanation, one researchers are reluctant to publicly state. Yet it quietly surfaces in scientific papers and private communications. What if the antitail was not outgassing at all? What if it was thrust? Here is why that idea is difficult to fully dismiss. First, the antitail was stable. It did not fluctuate with the object's rotation as expected from asymmetric outgassing. It remained pointed in the same direction relative to the sun for weeks. Second, the antitail was narrow. Typical cometary jets diffuse as they leave the nucleus. This one remained focused, resembling a directed stream rather than a diffuse plume. Third, the transition from antitail to normal tail was abrupt. In most comets, this transition is gradual. In 3I Atlas, the change occurred over just a few days in mid-September. Fourth, no corresponding increase in activity was observed elsewhere on the nucleus. If the antitail resulted from an active region on the sun-facing side, we would expect changes in brightness or coma structure, but none were detected. These observations do not definitively prove the antitail was artificial, but they strongly suggest something unusual occurred. Then on September 15th, something else happened. The antitail disappeared completely without a gradual fade or orientation shift. It simply stopped. And at that exact moment, within hours, astronomers detected the first pulse at 1,420 MHz. Let us talk about 1,420 MHz again. This is not just any radio frequency, it is the frequency, the one every SETI researcher on Earth has monitored for decades. As discussed, it is the natural emission line of hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. An intelligent civilization aiming to transmit a universally recognized signal would choose this frequency. The signal from 3I Atlas was first detected on September 15, 2025, by a radio observatory in Australia. It was weak, barely above the noise threshold, but persistent. Over the next 48 hours, additional observatories confirmed it. By September 18th, at least 7 independent stations had logged the same pattern, 813, 85, 13, 8. The intervals between pulses were consistent, approximately 142 seconds. The frequency was precise 1,420.4058 MHz, the exact center of the hydrogen line. The signal strength was stable. It did not fade or drift, repeating with mechanical regularity. Again, let us be clear about what this signal is not. It is not a natural radio emission. Comets do not emit coherent radio signals. They reflect sunlight, emit thermal radiation and release plasma when interacting with solar wind. But they do not generate narrowband radio pulses at specific frequencies. It is not interference from Earth-based transmitters. The signal was detected simultaneously by multiple observatories with time delays consistent with the light travel distance between stations, ruling out local sources. It is not a reflection or echo. The signal's Doppler shift matches the motion of 3I Atlas relative to the Sun. It is emanating from the object itself, not bouncing off it. So what is it? One possibility is that the signal is generated by some electrical discharge within the coma. Plasma interactions between charged dust particles and solar wind could theoretically produce radio emissions, but these would be broadband spread across a wide range of frequencies. They would not be concentrated at a single narrow bandwidth like 1420 MHz, and they certainly would not follow a mathematical pattern. Another possibility suggests a technological artifact not necessarily from 3i Atlas itself, but from something contained within it. This is where the scientific discussion becomes challenging, because once one considers artifacts and technology, one implicitly considers intelligence. And intelligence implies intent. Intent suggests communication, or perhaps something more ominous, deception. Let us explore this idea. If 3i Atlas is not a comet or not only a comet, then what is it? One hypothesis proposed by Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb is that the object could be a probe, a spacecraft, a technological artifact sent by an extraterrestrial intelligence to study our solar system. Loeb has carefully emphasized this is a low-probability scenario, yet he argues that the anomalies surrounding 3i Atlas warrant serious consideration. The signal at 1420 MHz strengthens this argument. If one were to design a probe for interstellar travel and wish to announce its presence upon arrival, what would be the strategy? One would transmit a signal on a universally recognized frequency and encode it with an unmistakable mathematical pattern, something immune to misinterpretation as noise, something like the Fibonacci sequence. Let us break down the pattern itself. 813, 8513, 8. At first glance it appears random 6 numbers without obvious structure. But a closer look reveals the numbers 5, 8 and 13 are consecutive Fibonacci numbers. The sequence appears twice 8, 13, 8 and 5, 13, 8. Why this specific arrangement? Some researchers suggest it might be a compressed message where each number represents a symbol, a coordinate or an instruction. Others propose it is simply a beacon, a clear declaration: we are here, we are intelligent, pay attention. Here is where speculation deepens. On October the 13th, 2025, exactly 108 years to the day after the famous Miracle of the Sun event at Fatima, Portugal, filmmaker David Miller reported observing unusual light emissions from 3i Atlas. Miller, with a background in nuclear fusion research and collaborations with MIT physicist Benjamin Clark, claimed these emissions followed a rhythmic pattern consistent with the Fibonacci sequence. He did not claim definitive proof of intelligence, but noted the timing and suggested the coincidence was worth documenting. It is important to state clearly that Miller's observation has not been independently verified. No peer-reviewed paper has been published and no other observatory has confirmed the light pattern. However, the data is intriguing and the pattern aligns with the radio signal. So what might the Fibonacci sequence mean in this context? In mathematics, it describes a specific type of growth, exponential yet controlled, appearing in systems balancing efficiency and complexity. In biology, it governs the spiral patterns of shells, the branching of blood vessels, the arrangement of leaves on a stem. In astrophysics, it describes matter distribution in spiral galaxies. In computer science, it is used in algorithms for data compression, encryption, and error correction. It is a universal pattern one any sufficiently advanced civilization would immediately recognize. If the intention is to prove a signal is artificial, the Fibonacci sequence is an ideal choice. There is another compelling detail. The interval between pulses 142 seconds is not arbitrary. 142 is a Fibonacci adjacent number, close to 144 the 12th Fibonacci number, but not exact. Why? One possibility is a deliberate choice, a recognizable number not perfectly aligned with the sequence adding a secondary layer of meaning. Another possibility relates to the object's rotation period. However, 3i Atlas does not appear to have a consistent rotation period. Its brightness fluctuates irregularly, suggesting a complex shape or tumbling motion. Therefore, the 142-second interval does not match the object's physical behavior, implying it is not driven by rotation but by something else. On October 20th, 2025, a team of researchers at the SETI Institute attempted to decode the signal. They employed standard cryptanalysis techniques, searching for patterns within patterns, testing different interpretations of the numbers, looking for hidden structure. What they found was both encouraging and frustrating. The signal is structured, but it is not a message in the traditional sense. It is not a sequence of words or images, nor a mathematical proof or star map. It is a pointer. In computer science, a pointer refers to a memory location. It does not contain data itself, but directs to where the data can be found. The signal from 3-point atlas might function similarly. The Fibonacci pattern might not be the message, but rather instructions for interpreting the message. Here is one possibility. The numbers 8, 13, 8, 5, 13, 8 could represent ratios, angles, or frequencies. They might describe a geometric structure, a method for organizing information in three-dimensional space. If so, the message itself might not be in the radio signal at all. It might be encoded in the object's physical structure, its trajectory, or its emissions across other wavelengths. This leads to a suggestion quietly circulating among researchers that the true message is not in the signal, but in what the signal points to. Observe, prepare, understand, the gate awaits. This phrase did not appear in any official scientific paper, nor did it originate from NASA or the European Space Agency. It appeared on social media attributed to an unnamed decoded message from the signal. Let us be very clear, there is no evidence this phrase was transmitted by 3-point atlas. There is no verifiable source for the claim, yet the phrase has gained traction, debated across forums and comment sections. Why? Because it feels deliberate. It implies something specific. It suggests the signal is not merely a beacon, but a warning or an invitation. Let us deconstruct the phrase. Observe could mean pay attention, look carefully, study what is happening. Prepare could mean get ready. Something is coming, take action. Understand could mean comprehend the situation, grasp the significance, do not react blindly. The gate awaits could mean there is an opportunity, a threshold, a transition point. Again, this phrase did not come from the signal itself, but its emergence and resonance with so many people are important. It indicates the signal has already altered our perception of 3-point atlas, transforming it from a scientific curiosity into a potential harbinger. Now let us consider where 3-point atlas is headed. On October the 29th, 2025, the object reached perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun. It passed within 130 million miles of our star, just inside Mars's orbit, travelling at approximately 42.2 miles per second. Then it was obscured by the Sun. For several weeks, Earth-based telescopes cannot observe the object as it's too close to the Sun's glare. This is the current period, the eclipse, the observational gap, a period when everything could change. Here is what we know about 3-point atlas's post-perihelion trajectory. First, it will reappear in early December 2025. By mid-November, it should emerge from behind the Sun and become visible again to ground-based telescopes. Second, its closest approach to Earth will be on December 19, 2025, at approximately 167.7 million miles away, far enough to pose no threat yet close enough for detailed observation. Third, it will pass Jupiter in March 2026 with a flyby distance of about 33.4 million miles, close enough for detailed observation by NASA's Juno spacecraft. Fourth, after Jupiter, it will exit the solar system. Its hyperbolic trajectory means it is not gravitationally bound to the Sun. It will continue outward, eventually crossing the heliopause and returning to interstellar space. This is the natural trajectory dictated by gravity and orbital mechanics. But there is a problem. The signal suggests the trajectory might not be natural. Let us discuss the Oort maneuver. In orbital mechanics, the Oort effect describes how a spacecraft can maximize its velocity change by firing its engines at its fastest point, typically perihelion. Adding velocity at perihelion yields far more kinetic energy than firing engines in deep space. There is a variant called a reverse Oort maneuver, where instead of accelerating, one decelerates firing engines opposite to motion, using the Sun's gravity well to amplify the braking effect. This is an extremely efficient way to slow down from interstellar speeds and enter a bound orbit around the Sun. And it is precisely what 3-point atlas could have performed during perihelion, while hidden from our view behind the Sun. If 3-point atlas executed a reverse Oort maneuver on October the 29th, we would not know until December when it re-emerges. If its trajectory has changed, if it moves slower than expected, or if its orbital parameters have shifted, we will know something happened. And if that something was deliberate, we will know. 3-point atlas is not a comet. It is a spacecraft. Let us be very cautious here. This is speculation. There is no direct evidence that 3-point atlas performed a maneuver. The 1420 MHz signal does not prove propulsion. The anti-tail does not prove artificial thrust. What we have is a collection of anomalies, and those anomalies taken together form a pattern that could be explained by natural processes, but also a pattern that could be explained by technology. Let us assume for a moment that the signal is real, deliberate, and originates from something intelligent. What would that mean? Scenario 1, this is a probe. The most optimistic interpretation is that 3i Atlas is an automated probe sent by an extraterrestrial civilization to study our solar system. The probe enters on a hyperbolic trajectory, observes, collects data, and transmits a signal to announce its presence. The signal is not a traditional message, it is a handshake, a declaration of peaceful curiosity. In this scenario, humanity's response should be measured, and scientific continue observing attempt to reply and prepare for further contact. This is the scenario SETI has anticipated for decades. Scenario 2, it is a warning. A less optimistic interpretation suggests the signal is a warning not from 3i Atlas itself, but from its senders. The message is encoded in the trajectory and timing. The object enters the solar system, broadcasts on a universal frequency, and then departs. The signal is not an invitation, but a notification. We know you're here. We are watching. This aligns with the dark forest scenario, the idea that the universe is populated by civilizations that remain silent to avoid detection by potential predators. If so, the signal aims not to initiate contact, but to establish presence, mark territory, and remind us of our non-solitude, urging caution. Scenario 3. It is the test. The third interpretation posits the signal as a test, a measure of our technological and intellectual development. The signal is deliberately ambiguous, structured enough to attract attention, yet vague enough to avoid clear communication. The test lies not in the signal itself, but in our response. Do we panic, ignore it, attempt to decode it, send a reply? Our reaction will inform the sender about our civilization, dictating whether communication continues or they move on. Scenario 4, it is a Trojan horse. The darkest interpretation is that 3i Atlas is not a probe at all. It is a weapon. The signal is a distraction drawing our attention while something else occurs. If the object performed a reverse Oort maneuver at perihelion, it could now be on a trajectory back toward Earth. Or it could have deployed smaller payloads, probes, sensors, or something worse, now moving independently through the solar system. The signal stops, the object vanishes behind the sun, and upon its re-emergence it no longer follows the expected path. This scenario is one no one wishes to discuss, but statistically it cannot be ruled out. If the signal is deliberate, someone sent it, and if someone sent it, they had a reason we do not know. As of today, October the 30th, 2025, the signal has ceased. The last confirmed pulse was detected on October the 28th, approximately 18 hours before perihelion. Since then, silence. Multiple observatories continue monitoring the 1,420 MHz band, listening for any resumption of the signal, scanning adjacent frequencies for variations or secondary transmissions. So far, nothing. This silence is not necessarily significant. The object is currently obscured by the sun, and radio signals would be absorbed or scattered by the solar corona, preventing detection even if transmitted. However, the timing is noteworthy. The signal began on September 15th, continued for 6 weeks, and then stopped precisely when 3i Atlas reached perihelion. Was this intentional or coincidental? We will not know until the object re-emerges in early December. Right now, 3i Atlas is on the far side of the sun, hidden from view, travelling at 42.2 miles per second on a path that will carry it past Jupiter and out of the solar system. Unless it is not. Unless something changed at perihelion. Unless the trajectory shifted. Unless the object is no longer following the predicted path. We will not know for another month. And that is the difficult part. Because right now, in this moment, all we can do is wait. NASA has publicly stated that 3i Atlas poses no threat to Earth. The object will come no closer than 167.7 million miles. Its trajectory is well understood, its composition consistent with a comet. Yet NASA has also acknowledged the anomalies, the unusual chemistry, the anti-tail, the nickel emissions, the signal. And in private communication, some scientists are more cautious. We do not know what we are looking at, one astronomer recently stated. We have data, we have observations, but we do not have an explanation that fits all of the data. And until we do, we cannot rule anything out. The European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft will attempt to observe 3i Atlas in November, shortly after it re-emerges from solar conjunction as it passes through its field of view on its way to Jupiter. NASA's Juno spacecraft will have an even better opportunity in March 2026 when 3i Atlas passes within 33.4 million miles of Jupiter. Both spacecraft carry instruments capable of detecting radio emissions, measuring chemical composition, and capturing high-resolution imagery. If there is anything unusual about 3I Atlas, if it has changed course, if it is still transmitting, if there are structures or features ground-based telescopes could not resolve, these spacecraft offer our best chance to find out. But that is months away. For now, we wait. Let us discuss the scientific community's response to all of this. Publicly, the tone is cautious, measured, professional. Astronomers emphasize natural explanations, citing cometary outgassing, plasma interactions, and observational uncertainties. They remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And they are right. The 1420 MHz signal could be instrumental noise. The Fibonacci pattern could be a coincidence. The nickel emissions could be explained by an unknown chemical process. All these explanations are possible, and until definitive proof emerges, they remain the most likely scenarios. But privately, the conversation differs. In emails and conference calls, in hallway discussions and late-night research sessions, scientists are asking questions that would have seemed absurd 6 months ago. What if it is not a comet? What if the signal is real? What if someone is trying to communicate? These questions are not asked lightly. They are posed by individuals who have dedicated their careers to studying the natural universe, people who understand the distinction between speculation and evidence. They ask these questions because the data is compelling. Not conclusive, but compelling. On October 25, 2025, the International Astronomical Union held a closed-door meeting to discuss 3I Atlas, attended by representatives from NASA, ESA, the SETI Institute, and major observatories worldwide. No official statement was released, but sources indicate discussions focused on 2 main topics. First, the need for coordinated observation. Multiple spacecraft and ground-based telescopes must align to track the object upon its December re-emergence, requiring international cooperation and careful scheduling. Second, the need for a response protocol if the signal resumes or new evidence of artificial origin emerges. The scientific community needs a plan. Who speaks for humanity? What do we say? How do we respond? These are not easy questions, unprecedented in human history. The SETI Institute has prepared for this moment for decades, establishing protocols, guidelines, and contingency plans. However, those protocols were designed for a specific scenario, detecting a radio signal from a distant star system. A signal taking years or decades to reach us, affording time to prepare, verify, and decide how to respond. 3. Atlas is different. It is not light years away. It is here in our solar system, moving through our planetary neighborhood. If the signal is real, the sender is close enough to observe us, close enough to respond. That changes everything. Outside the scientific community, the public reaction has been diverse. On social media, the signal's story spread rapidly, captivating millions worldwide who follow updates, share theories, and debate interpretations. Some see proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. Others dismiss it as mass hysteria or misinterpretation. Then there are those who perceive something darker, viewing the signal not as an invitation, but a warning, believing. 3. Atlas is here not to communicate, but to observe or threaten. Conspiracy theories proliferate, governments hiding information, the signal containing hidden instructions or threats. One persistent theory claims the gate awaits refers to a physical structure, a portal activated upon the object's trajectory completion. There is no evidence for this, yet the theory persists, gaining traction online. Mainstream media has been more circumspect. Major news outlets cover the signal, emphasizing the lack of definitive proof, quoting astronomers cautioning against hasty conclusions and presenting natural explanations alongside exotic possibilities. But the story is pervasive front-page news, trending on social platforms, discussed in classrooms, coffee shops, and living rooms globally. Regardless of 3I Atlas's true nature, the very act of asking these questions signifies a fundamental shift in our understanding of our place in the universe. For the first time, an object in our solar system cannot be definitively explained, and it broadcasts a signal that cannot be definitively dismissed. This is not the first time we have believed a signal from space was detected. In 1967, Cambridge University astronomers detected regular radio pulses from a fixed sky point so precise that the team briefly considered artificial origins, nicknaming the source Little Green Men 1. It proved to be a pulsar, a rapidly rotating neutron star, a natural phenomenon. In 1977, astronomer Jerry Eman, analysing data from the Big Ear radio telescope, noticed a strong narrowband radio signal from Sagittarius lasting 72 seconds. It was so unusual, so perfectly aligned with SETI's search, that Eamon circled it and wrote "wow" on the printout, hence the "wow" signal. Despite decades of searching, it was never detected again, its origin unknown. Some believe it was a natural astronomical phenomenon, others a one-time extraterrestrial transmission. We still do not know. In 2017, Oumuamua, the first confirmed interstellar object, passed through our solar system. Its elongated shape, unusual acceleration and lack of cometary activity led some researchers, notably Avi Loeb, to suggest it might be artificial, a probe, a light sail. Most astronomers disagreed, arguing Oumuamua could be explained as a natural, albeit unusual object. The debate continues. The point is this: we have been here before. We have detected anomalies, asked questions, and wondered if contact was finally made. Each time the answer was no, a natural explanation emerged. But that does not mean the answer will always be no. Statistically, we know we are not alone in the universe. Billions of stars, billions of planets exist in our galaxy. Probability suggests life should be common intelligence possible, and technology inevitable. The question is not whether intelligent life exists, but whether we will ever detect it. And right now, with 3i Atlas, we might be closer to that answer than ever before. Let us step back and ask a broader question. If the signal is real, if 3i Atlas is artificial, if it was sent by an intelligent civilization, what does that mean for us? Not scientifically, not technologically, but philosophically, existentially. What does it mean for humanity to know we are not alone? For millennia, humans have gazed at the night sky, crafting stories of gods and spirits, imagining other worlds, beings, and civilizations. But for all that time, it was imagination, speculation, hope, or fear projected onto the darkness. If 3i Atlas is real, it is no longer imagination, it is confirmation. We are not alone, we have never been alone, and the universe is far stranger, more populated, more complex than we ever imagined. But this realization has another side. If we are not alone, then we are not special, not unique, not the center of anything. We are merely one civilization among many, one species on one planet orbiting one star in one galaxy, among billions. This can be humbling or terrifying. If other civilizations exist, some will be more advanced, powerful and capable, and we have no way of knowing their intentions. This is the core of the dark forest hypothesis popularized by science fiction author Cixin Liu. The universe is like a dark forest where every civilization is a silent hunter. The first rule of survival is to remain quiet because revealing your position might attract something stronger, something that perceives you as a threat. In this view, the universe's silence is not due to rare intelligent life, but cautious intelligent life. Everyone is hiding, waiting, watching. If 3i Atlas is broadcasting a signal, whoever sent it is not hiding, meaning either they are unafraid of detection or they desire it. We do not know which. Let's return to the signal itself and examine it more carefully. The pattern is 8-13-8-5, 13-8-6, numbers a specific sequence. We have established these are Fibonacci numbers. But why this particular arrangement? One possibility is that the arrangement itself contains information not in what the numbers are, but in their order. Treating the sequence as a code where each number represents a position or a ratio can reveal structure. For example, 8 appears 3 times 13 twice 5 once. This gives a ratio of 3-to-1. While not a Fibonacci ratio, it approximates the golden ratio approximately 1.618, which is the limit of the ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers. In other words, the frequency distribution of the numbers approximates a fundamental mathematical constant. That is not random. The numbers, 5, 8, and 13, are all Fibonacci numbers, and the pattern of increases and decreases might represent a wave function encoding oscillation or modulation. But what is being modulated? What is the wave describing? We do not know yet. A third approach treats the sequence as coordinates. If each number represents a spatial dimension or directional vector, the pattern might describe a path through three-dimensional space. For instance, starting at position 8-13-8 and moving to 5-13-8 implies movement along one axis, the first coordinate changing from 8 to 5 a shift of 3 units. Mapped out, the sequence describes a specific trajectory, a path, a set of instructions. But instructions for what and relative to what origin point? Again, we do not know. What we do know is that the pattern is not random. It contains structure, and that structure is mathematical, meaning it is universal. Any civilization with an understanding of mathematics could decode it, and that is the point. Mathematics is the universal language transcending culture, biology, and technology. 2 + 2 = 4 whether you are human, a dolphin, or a silicon-based intelligence orbiting a red dwarf star. Mathematics is universal, and the Fibonacci sequence is one of its most universal patterns. Let us consider when the signal appeared. The first pulse was detected on September 15, 2025, 44 days before perihelion. The last pulse was detected on October 28, 2025, approximately 18 hours before perihelion. The signal was active for a total of 43 days. 43 is not a Fibonacci number, but it is close to 34, the ninth Fibonacci number, and 55, the 10th. Is that significant? Maybe, maybe not. But here is what is significant. The signal began on September 15th, the exact date when the anti-tail disappeared. For weeks, astronomers observed a jet of material pointing toward the Sun. Then on September 15th, the jet vanished, and at the same moment the signal began. It is as if the object switched modes from physical emission to electromagnetic transmission, from showing us something to telling us something. And the signal ended on October 28th, just before the object reached perihelion and disappeared behind the Sun. It is as if the transmission was timed to end precisely when we would lose visual contact. Is it possible this is mere coincidence, that the signal happened to start and stop at these specific moments by chance? Yes, it is possible, but it would be an extraordinary coincidence. There is another detail worth noting. The interval between pulses 142 seconds translates to approximately 2.37 minutes. Dividing 24 hours by 142 seconds yields roughly 608 pulses per day. 608 is not a Fibonacci number, but if factored, 608 equals 2 to the power of 5 multiplied by 19, and 19 is a prime number, in fact, the 8th prime number, and 8 is a Fibonacci number. Is this meaningful? It is difficult to say, but it suggests the interval was deliberately chosen not based on the object's rotation or orbital period, but on mathematical principles. On October 27, 2025, the United Nations held an emergency session to discuss 3i Atlas. The session was closed to the public, but a brief statement was released afterward. It read in part, "The international community acknowledges the ongoing observations of the interstellar object designated 3i Atlas. While the nature of the recent radio emissions remains under investigation, all member states are urged to maintain open channels of communication and to avoid unilateral action that could be misinterpreted or escalate tensions." The statement was carefully worded, acknowledging the signal without confirming its significance, calling for cooperation without suggesting urgency. But the subtext was clear: this is serious and we need to be prepared. Several governments have quietly activated their deep space tracking networks. Radar installations in Australia, Russia and the United States have been retasked to monitor the region of space where 3i Atlas will re-emerge in December. Military satellites with infrared and optical sensors have been repositioned, not because a threat is expected, but because its possibility cannot be entirely ruled out. Several space agencies, including NASA ESA and China's CNSA, have begun preliminary discussions about the feasibility of sending a probe to intercept 3i Atlas. Not now with current technology, but in the future. If another such object enters the solar system, could we reach it? Could we study it up close? Most experts say maybe if there is enough warning funding and political will. Right now we possess none of those things. While governments and space agencies debate protocols and response strategies, a different kind of responses occur at ground level. Amateur astronomers worldwide have aimed their telescopes at 3i Atlas, and since its discovery, tracking its position, measuring its brightness and photographing its coma. In the weeks since the signal's detection, they have also been listening. Several amateur radio enthusiasts have built or adapted receivers capable of monitoring the 1420 MHz band, listening for signal resumption, scanning adjacent frequencies, recording everything and sharing data online. A growing community, a loose network of observers across every continent, is dedicated to tracking 3i Atlas and documenting its behavior. They call themselves the Atlas Watch. On forums and chat groups, members of the Atlas Watch share observations, theories and concerns. Some are skeptical, believing the signal is instrumental noise or misinterpreted data, watching to see the natural explanation unfold. Others are believers convinced the signal is real 3i Atlas artificial, and that we are witnessing the most important event in human history. And then there are those in the middle, unsure what to believe but compelled to watch, sensing something significant is happening, even if they cannot articulate it. On October 29th, as 3i Atlas reached perihelion. Atlas. Watch members held an online vigil a continuous live stream where thousands gathered virtually to mark the moment. Some left messages of hope, others warnings, a few jokes. One message stood out, posted at the exact moment of perihelion. Whatever happens next, we were here, we saw it, we witnessed this moment. And that matters. Let us consider the dilemma scientists currently face. On one hand, they have a responsibility to follow the data, pursue evidence wherever it leads, ask uncomfortable questions and consider unlikely possibilities. On the other hand, they have a responsibility to avoid speculation, remain skeptical, and not jump to conclusions based on incomplete information. With 3i Atlas, these two responsibilities conflict. The data is compelling, the signal is real, confirmed by multiple observatories. The pattern is structured following the Fibonacci sequence. The timing is precise, starting and stopping at specific significant moments, but the data is also incomplete. We lack high-resolution images of the nucleus, direct measurements of the object's composition, and confirmed explanations for the nickel emissions or the anti-tail. Without that information, any conclusion is premature. So scientists are caught between two extremes. Declaring the signal artificial risks being wrong, destroying credibility, causing panic or false hope. Dismissing it as insignificant risks, missing the most important discovery in human history, appearing foolish when truth emerges. It is a no-win situation. Thus, most scientists choose a middle path. We do not know, but we are watching and we will share what we learn. It is not a satisfying answer, but it is honest. The truth is we do not know what 3i Atlas is, not yet. We have data observations, anomalies, but no answers. Until then, all we can do is keep watching, listening, and asking questions. As of today, October 30th, 2025, 3i Atlas is on the far side of the Sun. In 35 days it will re-emerge. By early December, ground-based telescopes will again observe it. At that moment we'll know if its trajectory has changed, if it is slower than expected, or if its path has shifted, indicating a perihelion maneuver, not a purely gravitational path. If the signal resumes, if new transmissions patterns or frequencies are detected, we will know the first transmission was not a fluke, but deliberate an attempt to communicate. If new anomalies appear, behavior inexplicable by cometary physics, we will know our understanding of 3i Atlas is fundamentally incomplete. Or we might find nothing has changed. The object might reemerge exactly where expected, moving at the predicted speed, the signal-silent anomalies resolving into natural explanations. If that happens, 3i Atlas will remain what it has always been, an unusual comet from another star system. Interesting, certainly. Important, yes, but not revolutionary, not world-changing. 35 days, that is how long we must wait. And in those 35 days the world will continue to watch, speculate, hope or fear, dismiss or believe. Because regardless of 3i Atlas's true nature, it has already changed us. It has forced us to ask questions we avoided, confront possibilities we denied, admit we do not know everything, that the universe is far stranger than we imagined. Let me offer my thoughts not as a narrator or researcher, but as someone who has studied this object for months, analysed data and spoken with scientists, skeptics and believers. I believe the signal is real. I do not know if it is artificial, if it represents intelligence, if it is a message beacon or warning. But I believe the signal is real. I believe the pattern is deliberate. I believe the timing is significant. And I believe we are only beginning to understand what 3i Atlas truly is. I also believe we must be cautious, careful not to jump to conclusions, not to let fear or excitement override rational analysis, not to mistake our hopes or fears for evidence. Because the truth is we do not know enough yet. We lack sufficient data and observations, and until we have them any definitive claim, whether this is definitely a comet or this is definitely a spacecraft, is premature. But I also believe we must be honest about what we are seeing. The anomalies are real. The signal is real. The possibility that 3i Atlas is something other than a natural comet is real. That does not mean it is likely, but it means it is possible. And possibility in science is everything, because every discovery begins with a possibility. Every breakthrough starts with a question brave enough to be asked, even when the answer seemed impossible. So here is my question. What if we are wrong, not about the data, not about the observations, but about our assumptions? What if the universe is not as empty as we think? What if intelligence is not as rare as we hope? What if we have been alone, not because we are unique, but because we have been too primitive to notice the signals that have been there all along? What if 3i Atlas is not the first visitor, but merely the first one we were advanced enough to detect? These are uncomfortable questions. They challenge our understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. But they are questions worth asking because if the signal is real, if 3i Atlas is artificial, if someone sent it, if we are being observed, contacted or tested, then everything changes. Not just for science or technology, but for philosophy, religion, politics, for every aspect of human civilization. The question, are we alone, is not just an astronomical question, it is an existential one. And right now, we might be closer to answering it than ever before. 35 days from now, we will know more. Not everything, but more. We will see where 3i Atlas is, measure its trajectory, listen for signals, and analyze its composition. Based on that information, we will update our understanding, refine our models, and revise our conclusions. That is how science works, not through sudden revelation, but through patient observation, the slow accumulation of evidence, and the willingness to change our minds when data demands it. For now, all we can do is wait, watch, and wonder. A very strange object moves through our solar system. We have watched it for months, given it a name, studied its trajectory, analysed its composition, listened to its signal, and we still do not know what it is. Perhaps it is a comet, an unusual rare one, but ultimately a natural object of ice, rock and dust cast out from another star system and briefly passing through ours. Or perhaps it is something else, something designed, deliberate, sent. We will not know for certain until December. But in the meantime, the signal has fundamentally changed how we think about the universe. It has reminded us that we are small, curious, and capable of asking questions even when afraid of the answers. And it has shown us that the universe is vast, strange, and full of possibilities we are only beginning to explore. The gate, if one exists, awaits. But first we watch, we listen, we learn, and we prepare for whatever comes next. Let us discuss who is currently watching 3i Atlas. Not just professional astronomers with their multi-million-dollar telescopes or space agencies with orbital observatories and deep space tracking networks. Let us talk about everyone else. Because in the months since its discovery, 3i Atlas has captivated millions worldwide. People who have never used a telescope, who could not differentiate a comet from an asteroid 6 months ago, are watching now. In observatories from Hawaii to Chile, South Africa to Australia, astronomers work around the clock taking measurements, analysing spectra, comparing datasets. But they are not alone. Amateur astronomers have set up telescopes in their backyards, on rooftops, in remote dark sky locations, photographing the sky, tracking the object's position and sharing their findings online. Radio enthusiasts have built receivers from scratch tuning to 1420 MHz listening for any whisper of a signal, recording everything and archiving data for future analysis. A growing community, a loose network of observers across every continent is dedicated to tracking 3i Atlas. Students in classrooms are learning about orbital mechanics, spectroscopy and interstellar space by following 3i Atlas's journey. And in living rooms, coffee shops and late-night conversations, ordinary people are asking extraordinary questions. One such person is Dr. Sarah Chen, a high school physics teacher in Vancouver. Not an astronomer or a researcher, but captivated by the signal's news, she followed the story, read papers, watched interviews, taught her students about the Fibonacci sequence and the hydrogen line. Then remarkably, she organised a global observation event. Dr. Chen reached out to teachers worldwide, proposing a coordinated effort. On the night of December 1st, 2025, the first night 3i Atlas would be visible after solar conjunction, students in every time zone would observe the same patch of sky. Not all would have telescopes, many would see nothing, but they would all be looking together. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, over 5,000 schools in 120 countries were signed up, from elementary schools to universities, urban classrooms to remote villages. Millions of students would participate. They called it the Global Watch. This is not about finding aliens, Dr. Chen stated in an interview. This is about showing young people they can be part of something bigger, contribute to human knowledge, look up at the sky and know millions of others are looking simultaneously. And maybe, she added, just maybe we will see something interesting. The Global Watch is not the only grassroots initiative. In online communities, citizen scientists analyse publicly available data, seeking patterns professional astronomers might have missed. One group, the Fibonacci Collective, studies the signal's numerical pattern, testing interpretations against mathematical constants and physical laws. Another, the Trajectory Trackers, models 3i Atlas's path, looking for deviations from predicted positions that might indicate a course correction. A third, the Quiet Listeners, continuously monitors the 1420 MHz frequency band, recording and archiving all data. These are not conspiracy theorists or fringe believers, but engineers, mathematicians, computer programmers, retired NASA employees, graduate students and software developers. People with the skills to analyze data, the knowledge to ask intelligent questions, and the time to devote to a fascinating mystery. And in some cases, they find things professional astronomers missed. On October the 15th, a programmer named Marcus Webb noticed unusual timing variations in the signal pulses. The published reports listed a consistent 142-second interval. But Marcus analyzing raw data found tiny microsecond-level fluctuations in the actual timestamps of each detected pulse. These variations were not random. They followed a pattern corresponding to 3I Atlas's motion relative to the solar system's barycenter, the combined center of mass of the Sun and all planets. In other words, the signal compensated for gravitational effects maintaining a constant interval, not in absolute time but in proper time as measured in the object's own reference frame. That is not something a natural phenomenon would do, that is something done deliberately to ensure signal coherence across different gravitational potentials. Marcus shared his finding online. Within hours, professional astronomers verified it. Within days, it was incorporated into ongoing analyses, and within a week, Marcus was invited to join a collaborative research project studying the signal. This is how science works now, not just in universities and research institutions, but in distributed networks of curious, skilled people worldwide. 3. IATLAS's discovery belongs to professional astronomers, but it's understanding the slow, patient work of analysing every detail, testing every hypothesis, following every lead belongs to everyone. Not everyone believes the signal is significant. Indeed, the majority of astronomers remain sceptical of anything unusual about 3I Atlas. Let us consider their arguments fairly. Todd Thomas Ensign, a planetary scientist at the University of Arizona, with 30 years studying comets and analysing data from dozens of missions, believes the excitement around 3I Atlas is overblown. Look, he said in a recent interview, I understand the excitement. It is an interstellar object that is rare interesting, but everything we are seeing can be explained by normal cometary processes. The composition, yes, unusual, but not impossible. Different star systems have different chemical abundances. A comet formed in a carbon-rich environment would naturally have high carbon dioxide and low water. The nickel emissions, again unusual but not unprecedented. Chemical pathways involving nickel carbonyl could produce those spectral lines under the right conditions. And the signal, Dr. Benson shook his head. Radio interference, instrumental artifacts, pattern-seeking behavior. We see what we want to see. Dr. Benson is not alone. Several prominent astronomers have published papers arguing 3I Atlas is an interesting yet ultimately natural comet. They point to its behavior. It has a coma, a tail brightens near the sun and shows outgassing activity, all hallmarks of a comet. Nothing about its behavior contradicts this interpretation. The anomalies, composition, anti-tail nickel emissions, can all be explained by variations in cometary chemistry and structure we simply have not observed before. Because here is the thing, we have only ever seen 3 interstellar objects. We have no baseline, no standard model for what an interstellar comet should look like. So when we see something unusual, is it because the object is artificial, or because our understanding of interstellar comets is incomplete? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, Dr. Benson stated. And so far we do not have extraordinary evidence. We have anomalies, curiosities, data points that do not fit our current models, but that does not mean aliens. That means we need better models. He paused. And yes, I know about the signal. I know about the Fibonacci pattern, but pattern recognition is a human cognitive bias. We are wired to see patterns even when they are not there. Show me a clear, unambiguous techno-signature, something that cannot possibly be natural, and then we will talk. Until then, I am going to assume 3I Atlas is what it appears to be, a comet from another star system. This is a reasonable position, the one most scientists adopt when confronted with unusual data. Skepticism is not close-mindedness. It is the foundation of the scientific method. One does not accept a claim simply because it is interesting. One accepts it because evidence compels it. And for many astronomers, the evidence does not yet compel them. But here is the counter-argument. To Rachel Kowalski, an astrobiologist at MIT, who studies conditions for life, biological activity signatures and methods for detecting extraterrestrial intelligence, believes skeptics are missing something important. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, she said. Just because we cannot definitively prove 3i Atlas is artificial does not mean we should assume it is natural. The null hypothesis, the default assumption should be, we do not know, not it is a comet, and not it is a spacecraft. We do not know, and when we do not know, we should investigate. We should gather more data, test hypotheses, and remain open to possibilities, even uncomfortable ones. Dr. Kowalski pointed to the history of scientific discovery. Think about pulsars, she said. When first detected, astronomers thought they might be artificial. They were so regular, so precise, they seemed designed. But we investigated gathered data and found a natural explanation. Or fast radio bursts. For years, we did not know what they were. Some speculated about alien technology, but we kept observing, analysing, and now we know they are natural astrophysical phenomena. But here is the key: we only found those natural explanations because we investigated, because we took the possibilities seriously even when unlikely. If we dismiss 3i Atlas as just a comet without thorough investigation, we might miss something extraordinary, and that would be a failure of science. This tension between skepticism and openness, caution and curiosity, defines the current moment in 3i Atlas's study. No one knows who is right. No one can know. Not yet. All we can do is continue observing, analysing and asking questions. Let's discuss the simulations. In recent weeks, multiple research teams have built computer models of 3i Atlas predicting its position upon December, re-emergence, its brightness and trajectory. But they also seek a deeper answer if 3i Atlas performed an Oort maneuver at perihelion. What would that look like to James Lee? A computational astrophysicist at Caltech specialising in orbital mechanics began running simulations in mid-October. First, he modelled the natural scenario: no thrust, no manoeuvres, just gravity. In this scenario, 3i Atlas follows a simple hyperbolic trajectory swinging around the Sun, gaining speed and continuing outward. Upon re-emergence in December, it should be exactly where expected, moving at the predicted speed. This is the baseline, the control case. Then Dr. Lee modelled the artificial scenario, assuming 3i Atlas is a spacecraft with a propulsion system. At perihelion, it fires its engines in a reverse Oort maneuver, bleeding off velocity to enter a bound orbit around the Sun. How much thrust would be required? That depends on the object's mass, and that is where things get interesting. If 3i Atlas is a typical comet ice rock and dust, its mass is probably around 11 billion short tons based on estimated size. To slow down from 42.2 miles per second to orbital velocity would require enormous energy, tens of terawatts sustained for hours. That is a lot. More than solar panels or nuclear reactors could generate. Something more exotic would be needed, fusion engines perhaps, or matter-antimatter annihilation. Possible but difficult. But what if 3i Atlas is not solid? What if it is mostly hollow, a shell surrounding empty space? Then its mass could be much lower, perhaps 1.1 billion short tons or even less. And if the mass is lower, the thrust requirement drops dramatically. Now we are talking about power levels potentially achievable with advanced nuclear or fusion technology. Still difficult, still beyond our current capabilities, but not impossible. Dr. Lee ran multiple simulations varying mass, thrust, duration and timing, and found something unexpected. If the burn is timed precisely starting a few hours before perihelion and sustained for about 8 hours, a stable elliptical orbit can be achieved with perihelion at Mars's distance and aphelion at Jupiter's distance. In other words, the spacecraft could be parked in the solar system's habitable zone, close enough to observe the inner planets, yet far enough to remain undetected by casual observation. It is the perfect surveillance orbit. Dr. Lee was careful to emphasize this is speculation. He was not claiming 3i Atlas performed this maneuver, but exploring what would be possible if the object were artificial. My job, he said, is to model scenarios, test hypotheses, and show what the data would look like under different assumptions. And what I can tell you is this: if 3i Atlas wanted to stay in the solar system, if it wanted to observe us without being obvious, then an Oort maneuver at perihelion would be the most efficient way to do it. Whether that actually happened, whether the object is artificial at all, that is for the observers to determine. I am just showing what is possible. Other research teams have run similar simulations with similar results. If 3i Atlas is artificial and performed a maneuver, we should see specific changes upon its re-emergence. First, a position offset the object should be slightly ahead of or behind its predicted position, depending on the timing and duration of the burn. Second, a velocity change: the object should be moving slower than expected, perhaps by a few miles per second, but measurably so. Third, orbital modification: the object's trajectory should no longer be hyperbolic but elliptical, bound to the Sun. These are testable predictions, falsifiable hypotheses, and in December we will know if they are correct. While scientists debate hypotheses and run simulations, the rest of the world has embraced something more visceral speculation. Media coverage of 3I Atlas has been intense. In the first weeks after discovery, coverage was measured scientific reporting facts, an interstellar object detected moving fast passing through the solar system. Then came the signal. Headlines shifted. Is this a message from aliens? Scientists detect Fibonacci code in the interstellar object. The signal from 3I Atlas first contact or cosmic coincidence. Some outlets maintained composure interviewing astronomers, explaining uncertainty, emphasizing no conclusions. Others leaned into spectacle, publishing breathless articles about alien motherships and interstellar probes, quoting fringe researchers, making bold claims, presenting speculation as fact. The public, hungry for answers, consumed it all. On social media, the conversation fractured into camps: believers convinced 3I Atlas is artificial, the signal real, witnessing first contact. Skeptics insisting it is a comet, the signal noise, imaginations running wild. And the curious unsure what to believe but fascinated by the mystery, eager for more information. Each camp has its influencers, thought leaders, and online communities constantly arguing. But beneath the noise, something interesting is happening. People are learning. They are learning about orbital mechanics and spectroscopy, the Fibonacci sequence, and the hydrogen line, the universe's scale, the possibility of life beyond Earth, and the methods we use to search for it. A month ago, most people could not define an astronomical unit. Now millions worldwide can explain the difference between perihelion and aphelion. A month ago, reverse Oort maneuver meant nothing outside a small aerospace engineering community. Now it trends on social media. This is the power of a good mystery. It captures attention, provokes curiosity, makes people want to understand, and perhaps that is 3I Atlas's true significance, not what it is, but what it represents. A reminder that the universe is vast and strange, with unanswered questions and unexplored possibilities, a cosmos full of mystery worth paying attention to. We are now entering the final phase of this story. In less than 35 days, 3I Atlas will re-emerge from behind the sun. Telescopes worldwide will turn toward its expected position. Observers will measure its trajectory, brightness, and composition, and we will know not everything, but enough. Observatories are already preparing. The European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope in Chile is allocating observation time in early December. The Keck Observatory in Hawaii coordinates with other facilities for continuous coverage. NASA's Hubble Space Telescope has scheduled observation windows. Radio observatories are ready to scan the 1,420 MHz band. If the signal resumes, they will detect it within minutes. And spacecraft in the solar system, ESA's JUICE, NASA's Juno, and several Mars orbiters are positioning for optimal observation angles. This is not a casual effort. It is a coordinated global campaign to observe a single object with unprecedented detail, because everyone involved understands what is at stake. If 3I Atlas re-emerges exactly where expected, moving at the predicted speed with no signal and no anomalies, then the story ends. It is a comet. Unusual, yes. Interesting, certain. But natural. But if anything is different, if the trajectory has changed, if the signal resumes, if new anomalies appear, then the story is just beginning. To Emily Rodriguez, coordinator of the International Observation Campaign, a career astronomer with 25 years of experience and dozens of published papers, has never been more nervous. This is it, she said during a recent planning meeting. This is the moment. In a few weeks we will have our answer, or at least we will have more data, better data that will let us narrow down the possibilities. But whatever we find, it is going to be significant, because 3I Atlas has already changed how we think about interstellar objects. It has already pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible. And I suspect it is going to keep surprising us. Let us take a moment to acknowledge something important. This is not just a story about a comet or a signal or a scientific mystery. It is a story about people. People who dedicate their lives to studying the stars. People who build telescopes, write software, and analyze data. People who lie awake at night thinking about orbital mechanics, spectroscopy, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. This is their passion, their calling, their life's work. And for many of them, 3I Atlas represents something profound. Dr. Alan Miller, 72 years old, an astronomer, For half of a century, who's discovered comets, studied asteroids, and contributed to our understanding of the solar system, was reflective when I spoke to him in early October. He said, "I've spent my entire career hoping for a moment like this, hoping that we would find something, some sign, some evidence that we are not alone. And now here we are, maybe possibly. It might be nothing. It probably is nothing, but it might not be." He paused. "I'm an old man. This might be my last chance to see something extraordinary, to witness the most important discovery in human history. Or it might not, maybe 3i. Atlas is just a comet. Maybe I will spend the rest of my career studying comets and asteroids and never knowing if we are alone, but I am grateful. Grateful that I get to be here right now in this moment of possibility. Grateful that I get to watch and wonder and hope. That is what keeps us going, not certainty hope." Dr. Miller is not alone in feeling this way. For many astronomers, 3. Atlas represents more than a research project. It represents a dream, a lifetime of questions, a career spent searching for answers. And whether the answer is yes, it is artificial, or no, it is natural, the fact that we are asking the question, the fact that we are taking it seriously, that matters. Let us conduct a thought experiment. Let us assume just for a moment that the skeptics are wrong, that 3i Atlas is not a comet, that the signal is real, that the object is artificial. What happens next? First, there would be confirmation, multiple observations, multiple analyses, multiple independent verifications. The scientific community would require absolute certainty before any public announcement. That process would take weeks, perhaps months. But eventually the evidence would become overwhelming and someone, NASA, ESA, the UN, would make a statement, "We have detected evidence of extraterrestrial technology in our solar system." And then everything changes. Not immediately, not dramatically, but fundamentally, because that statement would be the most important sentence ever spoken by a human being. It would rewrite our understanding of the universe. It would reshape our understanding of ourselves. It would answer humanity's oldest question, are we alone? And the answer would be no. The implications would ripple outward. Scientifically, it would open entirely new fields of study: astroarchaeology, xenotechnology, interstellar, communication protocols. We would study 3i Atlas with every instrument available, analysing its structure, materials, propulsion system, trying to understand its construction origin and senders. And we would listen. We would search for more signals, scan the sky for other objects, probes, or signs of intelligence. Philosophically, it would challenge our place in the cosmos. We are not unique. We are not special. We are one species among many. That realization would be humbling for some, terrifying for others, liberating for a few. Every religion would grapple with the implications. Every philosophy would adapt. Every political system would face questions of sovereignty, representation, and belonging. If other intelligences exist, do we have obligations to them? Rights, responsibilities. These are not abstract questions. They are urgent, practical concerns. Politically, it would be complicated. Who speaks for humanity? The UN, individual nations, a new international body. How do we coordinate a response ensuring careful, ethical, transparent communication? And how do we prevent panic, managing the transition from a universe where we thought we were alone to one where we know we are not? These are difficult questions with no easy answers. But in the long term, I believe we would adapt, learn and grow, because that is what humans do. We face the unknown, ask questions, find answers, and then ask more questions. The discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence would not be the end of the story. It would be the beginning of a new era of exploration, a new understanding of our place in the universe, a new relationship with the cosmos, and perhaps a new hope for our future. But we are not there yet. Right now, on October the 30th, 2025, we are still in the waiting phase, the uncertainty phase, the phase where anything is possible. 3. Atlas is behind the sun, silent, invisible, unknown. And for the next 35 days, all we can do is wait. Across the world, people watch the calendar counting down to December 1st when the object re-emerges. Scientists prepare instruments. Students organize their global watch event. Amateur astronomers clear schedules. And in quiet rooms and late-night conversations, people wonder what we will find. Will the signal resume? Will the trajectory change? Will we see something new, unexpected, something that finally gives us an answer? Or will 3. Atlas continue on its path, unchanged and unchanging? A comet from another star system briefly passing through ours, we do not know, but we are about to find out. And that is the most exciting part, not the answer, but the moment before the answer, the anticipation, the possibility, the recognition that we are living through something significant, that we are witnesses to a mystery that just might change everything. So here we are, October 31st, 2025, 35 days until we know more. The signal has stopped. The object is hidden. The world is watching. And somewhere out there, beyond the sun, beyond our ability to see or measure or understand, Atlas continues its journey, moving at 42.2 miles per second, trailing a faint coma of gas and dust, silent, enigmatic, and utterly fascinating. For now, all we can do is watch the clock and prepare ourselves for whatever comes next. Because in 35 days, the mystery of 3i Atlas will take its next turn. And when it does, we will be ready. Or at least we will try to be. Let us consider Jupiter. For weeks, the conversation focused on one maneuver, the reverse orbit, the possibility that 3i Atlas would use its perihelion pass hidden by solar glare to fire a thruster, slow down and enter a new orbit. An orbit that, as Avi Loeb's calculations suggested, could bring it on an intercept course with Earth by late November or early December. This is the scenario that held us in suspense, the Trojan horse, the Black Swan event. The possibility of this object being not just a probe but a potential threat. But what if we are wrong? What if we have been looking at the wrong planet? What if the destination was never Earth? There is another hypothesis, another trajectory just as chilling, just as deliberate, and in many ways far more intelligent. The destination is not Earth, it is Jupiter. Let us examine the logic. If 3i Atlas is an alien technological craft, a colonization force, or an advanced probe, what is its logical objective? Would it come straight to Earth, a planet with 8 billion inhabitants, a chaotic civilization, a robust immune system that would react with panic and hostility, a planet with a deep heavy gravity well that makes landing and more importantly launching incredibly expensive and difficult? Or would it go somewhere else, somewhere quiet, uncontested with more resources, lower gravity and a strategic position from which to observe and eventually control the entire solar system? If you are an interstellar colonizing group, you avoid unnecessary conflict. You do not land in a crowded, unpredictable city. You go to the high ground. In our solar system, the high ground is not Earth, it is Jupiter. Consider the trajectory. 3. Atlas is already on a path that takes it very close to Jupiter with a close flyby scheduled for March 2026. It would require only a very slight orbit maneuver. At perihelion, a tiny burn, a small velocity change to shift that trajectory from a flyby to a rendezvous. It would not need a massive reverse thrust burn to slow down and intercept Earth. It would just need a gentle nudge, a little acceleration using the sun's gravity to fling itself into a perfect capture orbit around the largest, most powerful planet in our solar system. It is a smarter move, a more patient move, it is a checkmate move. While we have anxiously watched our own backyard terrified of a direct threat, the real invasion might be happening elsewhere entirely, a quiet, uncontested colonization of the outer solar system. And by the time we even realize they are there, it will already be too late. Why Jupiter? To us it is a distant hostile giant, a ball of gas and radiation, a place we send hardened probes, not a place we would ever live. But to an advanced interstellar intelligence, Jupiter is not a planet. It is a resource hub. It is a fortress. It is the key to the entire solar system. Let us look at the assets. Jupiter is not just one planet, it is a system of its own with dozens of moons. 4 of them are massive planet-sized worlds in their own right, the Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto. And 3 of them, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, are water worlds believed to harbour vast liquid water oceans buried beneath miles-thick ice crusts. Water, the universal solvent, the single most important resource for life and industry. One can drink it, grow things with it, and split it into hydrogen and oxygen rocket fuel. The highest grade, most powerful rocket fuel in existence. An interstellar craft arriving after a long journey would be low on fuel. Its first priority would be a refueling station. The Jupiter system is not just a gas station, it is an entire strategic reserve. Now let us look at the real prize, Ganymede. Ganymede is the largest moon in the entire solar system, bigger than the planet Mercury, bigger than Pluto. It has a huge subterranean ocean of water. It has a low-density surface, easy to dig into, easy to build within. And it has 2 incredibly unique features. First, low gravity. Ganymede's surface gravity is just about 4.6 feet per second squared. Earth's is about 32.2 feet per second squared. What does that mean? It means launching things into space from Ganymede is effortless. On Earth, we build monstrous rockets burning millions of tons of fuel just to fight our way out of our own gravity well. On Ganymede, one could launch massive industrial payloads, colonization ships, or military craft with a fraction of the energy. It is the perfect launch point to the rest of the solar system. Second, a magnetic field. Ganymede is the only moon in our solar system known to possess its own magnetic field, a dynamo churning in its metallic core. That magnetic field, though weak, provides a shield, a first line of defense against Jupiter's brutal radiation belts. It is a small protected bubble in the most hostile environment in the solar system, a perfect place to establish a base. And there is one more thing, an incredible coincidence: Ganymede has an atmosphere. It is thin, incredibly thin, but it contains something vital: oxygen. A craft arriving at Ganymede could immediately begin harvesting atmospheric oxygen, having breathable air before even drilling down to the water ice. It could hit the ground running. Water fuel, low gravity, a magnetic shield oxygen is not just a good spot, it is the perfect spot. If you wanted to conquer a solar system, you would not go to Earth. You would go to Ganymede. You would establish your base drill for water, manufacture fuel, build your industry, launch your ships, and you would do it all in complete secrecy while the inhabitants of the third planet were busy arguing whether you were a comet or not. The colonization of Jupiter's moons is just the first step, the beachhead. From there, one has uncontested access to the single greatest source of industrial material in the solar system, the asteroid belt. And Jupiter conveniently controls it. We have our main asteroid belt, a band of trillions of rocks and metals orbiting between Mars and Jupiter, but Jupiter also has its own private collection, the Trojan asteroids. These are two massive clouds of asteroids, each containing millions of objects locked in Jupiter's orbit. They follow the planet around the Sun, trapped in a perfect gravitational resonance, 60 degrees ahead and 60 degrees behind the planet. If one has a base on Ganymede, one has an effectively unlimited supply of high-grade minerals and metals right on the doorstep. And here is the strategic genius: gravity. If you launch from Earth to mine the asteroid belt, you must fight your way out of Earth's gravity, fly millions of miles, lock onto a moving target, mine it, and then fly all the way back. It is a logistical nightmare. But if you launch from Ganymede, gravity is low, you can launch effortlessly. You fly a short hop to the Trojan asteroids, which are locked in a gravity-neutral zone between Jupiter and the Sun. You mine your resources, you fly back. You have all the water needed for fuel, all the metal and minerals needed for industry, low gravity for easy transport. You have a perfect self-sustaining industrial base from which to colonize the entire solar system. You could work your way outward, setting up colonies on Saturn's moons like Titan. You could work your way inward to the asteroid belt to Mars. You could establish a presence across the entire system uncontested. By the time humanity even figures out how to send a probe to chase you down, a mission that would take us decades to plan and launch, they would find you already established everywhere. This is the destination Jupiter hypothesis. It does not rely on a direct hostile confrontation. It relies on patient strategy and a perfect understanding of orbital mechanics and resource management. It is the move a truly intelligent, advanced civilization would make. And 3i Atlas's trajectory is already aligned for it. It flew by Mars, perhaps collecting data. It is using the Sun for a gravity assist. And its next stop is a close approach to Jupiter. All it needs is that one tiny push, that one hidden maneuver to turn a flyby into an arrival. A maneuver that would have happened yesterday hidden behind the Sun. If 3. Atlas is a craft, a colony ship, a probe. Where did it come from? The universe is vast. Tracing a trajectory back through interstellar space is almost impossible. The object has been travelling for millions, maybe billions of years. It could have come from anywhere. But the calculations are not random. We know its direction of origin, the constellation Sagittarius, the heart of the Milky Way, and we can trace its path backward. Recently, astronomers did just that. They took the known velocity and trajectory of 3i Atlas and backtracked its journey over 10 million years, checking its path against the known movements of stars in our galactic neighbourhood. They identified 93 stars the object would have encountered over that period, and they found something deeply fascinating. Over the course of 10 million years, the closest 3i Atlas came to any of those 93 other stars was a distance of 0.3 light-years. That is 63,000 astronomical units. To put that in perspective right now, it is just 1.4 astronomical units from our Sun. What does this mean? It means its journey here was not an accident. It was not just passing by another star and getting flung in our direction. Its trajectory toward our Sun is in the context of its 10 million year journey an extreme statistical anomaly, a 1 in a million shot. It is almost as if it was aimed. But where could it have been aimed from? There is one candidate more likely than others, always Barnard's star. It is the second closest star system to our own, just 5.96 light-years away. It is a red dwarf, older and dimmer than our Sun, and we know it has planets at least 4, perhaps more, orbiting that star. Here is the connection. Barnard's star is located in the constellation of Fucus, the Serpent Bearer. This is right next to Sagittarius, the direction 3i Atlas came from. In the night sky, their origin points are incredibly close together. And then there is the math. If you travelled from Barnard's star 5.96 light-years away, at the observed speed of 3i Atlas approximately 37.3 miles per second, and the journey would take approximately 30,000 years. In the grand scheme of interstellar travel, that is not a long time. It is a manageable journey, a journey one could plan, a journey one could survive. We are not saying 3. Atlas is from Barnard's star, but it is a candidate, a plausible origin point, a red dwarf system with its own planets headed toward our system. Perhaps this is what advanced civilizations do. They do not just explore, they move. They migrate from one star system to the next, using resources, setting up outposts and continuing their journey. And 3i Atlas is just the latest arrival. Let us revisit the anti-tale. For weeks we discussed 2 possibilities. Possibility A, it was a natural jet of carbon dioxide, gas and dust pointing toward the Sun, which later dissipated as a normal tail formed. Possibility B, it was artificial thruster braking maneuver. Now there is new data, a new anomaly that complicates the natural explanation and lends chilling new weight to the artificial one. Recent measurements of 3i Atlas suggest its velocity has not been constant. Let me be clear. We expect its velocity to change. That is what gravity does. As it falls toward the Sun, it speeds up. That is normal. But the observed changes do not perfectly match the models. In the weeks before perihelion, several observatories recorded a slight reduction in its acceleration rate. A slowdown. It was too subtle to be a definitive braking maneuver, but it was too large to be a measurement error. So what could cause an object to slow down when gravity is telling it to speed up? The most common explanation for a comet is cometary drag or outgassing. As the comet heats up, jets of gas erupt from its surface. These jets act like tiny thrusters. If they happen to fire in the direction of the comet's motion, they can push against it, causing a tiny measurable deceleration. This is known as non-gravitational acceleration. But here is the problem. To create the observed slowdown 3i Atlas would need to be outgassing massively. We would need to see a huge coma, a brilliant tail, vast plumes of gas and dust. And we do not. Spectroscopic surveys from multiple observatories, including the European Southern Observatory and Pan-STARRS, have revealed minimal volatile activity. In fact, the object has been described as lacking a typical cometary tail for most of its approach. There is no cometary tail or gas emission strong enough to justify this deceleration. In short, the engine is firing, but there is no smoke. Astrophysicists rechecked all models, factoring in solar tides, bayes, planetary perturbation, solar radiation pressure, and it is not enough. These natural forces can only account for a fraction of the observed slowdown. It is not enough to close the equation, one astronomer told Nature Astronomy. This brings us back to Avi Loeb. He points out that this is exactly what Oumuamua did. It also exhibited non-gravitational acceleration, but in the opposite direction. It sped up. Loeb argued that Oumuamua's acceleration was caused by sunlight pushing on a very thin, flat light sail. Now with 3i Atlas, we have the opposite, a non-gravitational deceleration with no visible cause. Loeb argues that controlled deceleration is a sign of mechanical or structural responsiveness, something not seen in nature. If 3i Atlas has a flat geometry, solar torque could be acting on it unevenly. Or if the anti-tail was thrust, this is the data that proves it. We have an object that is slowing down when it should be speeding up. We have an object that is firing thrusters with no visible exhaust. We have an object that is behaving exactly like Oumuamua, but in reverse. And we have an object that is now today hidden behind the Sun at the perfect moment to perform its main final maneuver. The skeptics argue this could just be an instrumentation error, that the object's faintness, and changing brightness make velocity calculations difficult, but the pattern is there. The equation does not close. Let us discuss a black swan. The term, popularized by essayist Nassim Taleb, refers to an event impossible to predict, a complete surprise with a profound game-changing impact on history. In hindsight, these events always seem inevitable, but beforehand they are unthinkable. The invention of the internet, the 2008 financial crisis, the 9/11 attacks. Avi Loeb has warned that 3I Atlas could be a black swan event, an event that initially appears natural, just another comet, but ultimately proves to be something else entirely, a Trojan horse. This is why he has been so vocal, willing to risk his reputation by challenging the mainstream consensus. Because if there is even a 0.1% chance this object is technological, the implications are 100%. If this object turns out to be artificial, Loeb said, it will redefine not just astronomy but civilization itself. This is the core dilemma. The scientific community is trained to dismiss low-probability events to favour the simplest explanation, the null hypothesis, and 99.9% of the time that is the correct approach. But when the consequences of being wrong are total, the simplest explanation is not always the safest. If a doctor sees a strange shadow on an X-ray, they do not dismiss it as probably nothing. They investigate because if it is something, the consequences of ignoring it are catastrophic. 3. I-Atlas is a shadow on our solar system's X-ray. It has 8 documented anomalies that differentiate it from any natural comet we have ever seen. 1 ecliptic alignment. Its trajectory is almost perfectly aligned within 5 degrees with the flat plane of our solar system. The odds of this for a random interstellar object are tiny. 2. The anti-tail, the sunward-pointing jet that defies typical comet physics. 3. Massive size. It's 1,000 times more massive than Borisov and 1,000,000 times more massive than Oumuamua. 4 planetary flybys, a trajectory that coincidentally brings it close to Mars, Venus and Jupiter. 5. Nickel-enriched coma, the industrial signature of nickel without iron. 6. Low water content, a composition of 4% water when 80% is typical for comets. 7. Extreme polarization. The light reflecting off it polarizes in an extreme negative way, unprecedented among comets. 8. The Wiao signal. Its arrival direction is within 9 degrees of the 1977 Wiao signal. Any one of these would be an interesting curiosity, all 8 of them together on the same object. This is what Loeb calls cumulative improbability. This is the definition of a black swan. An object that looks like a comet, acts mostly like a comet, but has a collection of features that when taken together point to something else entirely. And this black swan is currently hidden behind the sun at the exact moment it could be performing its most critical maneuver. Let us talk about the WOW signal. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University detected a powerful unexplained narrowband radio signal. It lasted for 72 seconds. It was exactly the kind of signal that SETI was searching for. Astronomer Jerry Eman, reviewing the data, was so stunned he circled the sequence on the printout and wrote, "Wow," in the margin. The signal came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. It was never detected again. For 48 years, it has remained one of astronomy's greatest unsolved mysteries, a single powerful burst of seemingly intelligent communication, then silence. It was dismissed by most as a one-off anomaly, a glitch, perhaps a reflection of an Earth-based signal. Until now, because we know where 3I Atlas came from, the direction of Sagittarius. Avi Loeb and his collaborators calculated 3I Atlas's position back in 1977 when the Wiao signal was detected. On that date, 3I Atlas was far out still in deep interstellar space, but its position in the sky was just 9 degrees away from the Wiao signal's origin point. A 9-degree alignment. Is that a coincidence? The chance of 2 random directions in the sky aligning that closely is about 0.6%. It is possible. It is just unlikely. What if 3I Atlas or something associated with 3I Atlas emitted that signal as it passed through the outer solar system 48 years ago? Oh, hello, as it entered the neighbourhood. And now, after 5 decades of travel, it has finally arrived. And it is broadcasting again. Not a single wow burst, but a deliberate repeating pulse on the hydrogen line, the Fibonacci sequence 813-85-13-8. The connections are speculative, but they are piling up. A signal from 1977, an object from the same direction. A new signal in 2025 on the exact frequency SETI has been listening to for decades. How many once-in-a-lifetime coincidences are we allowed to have before we admit something is going on? While the public debate between scientists like Avi Loeb and his skeptical colleagues has played out in the media, a darker, more secretive conversation has been happening. On a restricted dark web board, a document appeared. We cannot verify this document or confirm its authenticity. We present it as it was found, another piece of this baffling puzzle. The memo is dated August 2nd, 2025, just 1 month after 3I Atlas was discovered. The subject line, C 2019 Y4 Atlas Anomalous Behavior and Classification Update. The clearance level, Level 5 clearance required, do not distribute. The summary reads, the object exhibits accelerative properties inconsistent with Newtonian predictions. Preliminary analysis indicates non-gravitational influences of unknown origin. Surface scans suggest highly reflective composite material. Spectral anomalies recorded. This aligns perfectly with the deceleration anomaly. The spectral anomalies, the reflective composite material, could explain the high albedo and fluctuating brightness. Then the action items: suspend all public discussion outside scripted narrative. Redirect external communications to standard comet disintegration protocol. Neutralize unauthorized dissemination on digital platforms. This is the official story we have been hearing. It is just a comet. It is breaking up. It is normal. But then the memo contains a final chilling confidential note. Confidential. Object appears to be under active vector control. Maintain operational silence. Active vector control. That is not a term for a comet. That is a term for a guided missile, a spacecraft. The memo continues, detailing a track ID and an anomaly summary. Unscheduled vector deviation detected. Object exhibited an instantaneous delta phi event of 0.0023 miles per second, inconsistent with expected gravitational influence. The magnitude and direction of course alteration suggest active propulsion or controlled maneuvering. It claims the object is not a natural. This is the smoking gun conspiracy theorists have sought a document proving NASA knows the truth and is actively hiding it. Is it real? It is almost certainly fake. A fabrication designed to sow panic and mistrust. But what if it is not? What if the most chilling part of the memo is the section titled Signal Data Level 5 Clearance? Let us look at the signal data section of that leaked memo. Remember, this memo was supposedly written on August 2nd, 2025. The signal, the 813.8 13.8 Fibonacci pulse, was not publicly reported until mid-September. But the memo dated August 2nd lists the following: bandwidth 1420.4058 MHz hydrogen line, pattern repeating narrow band burst every 142 seconds, decoding attempts failed non-terrestrial coding sequence suspected, the exact frequency, the exact interval. How could a memo faked or real from August 2nd contain the precise details of a signal that would not be discovered for another 6 weeks? There are only two possibilities. One, the memo is real, and NASA has been tracking the signal since at least August, hiding the data from the public under Level 5 clearance. The discovery in September was not a discovery at all. It was a controlled leak. Two, the memo is a retrofitted fake. Someone faked it after the signal was reported and simply backdated it to August 2nd to make it look more credible. The second option is by far the most logical, but the document was reportedly posted before the public reports of the signal. This is the heart of the mystery. The timeline does not add up, and the comments attached to the leak on the dark web board are even more disturbing. One user, DeepSignal88, wrote, "OP is not wrong. Object is not natural. We call it Class 7. Instructions were given to keep narrative contained. Public cannot know. Check DSN anomaly report. 17 days until first major orbital deviation. Don't ask how I know. This account will be gone soon." Another user added, "Signal analysis confirms persistent emissions at 1420.4058 MHz. The intervals appear to follow non-random prime factor patterns implying intentional encoding." And then this: more concerning is the latest DSN report on trajectory modifications. The object is projected to enter a stable Lagrange region between Earth and the Sun. This is a new trajectory, a new hypothesis. Not an Earth intercept, not a Jupiter rendezvous, but a stable orbit parked perfectly in a Lagrange region, a gravity-neutral spot where it can sit and watch. Again, this is unverified. It is almost certainly disinformation, but it all returns to the same terrifying core. The object is under active vector control. It is not a comet. It is a vessel, and it is making deliberate propulsive maneuvers. If that is true, then the 35-day wait is not just a period of observation. It is a countdown, while we are blind hidden by the sun. 3. Atlas is not unobserved. We have probes and spacecraft scattered across the solar system, many of them in the right place at the right time to get a look. This is the ad hoc fleet missions not designed for this, but repurposed in real time to track our visitor. First, there was the Mars flyby. On October the 3rd, Atlas passed within 18.6 million miles of Mars. Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, TGO, both turned their instruments to observe it. The images they sent back were faint challenging. The cameras were designed to look at a bright planet, not a dim comet 100,000 times fainter, but they saw it a fuzzy white dot. NASA's rovers on the surface, Perseverance and Curiosity, also looked up. Perseverance, after stacking 20 images, found it a faint smudge of light exactly where predicted. And then there was the HiRISE camera, the most powerful telescope in the Mars system aboard NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. It did take a photograph, the highest resolution image we could possibly have of 3I Atlas. That image has not been released. Avi Loeb claimed on the Joe Rogan Experience that he personally requested the data from the principal investigator and never received a response. The official reason a US government shut down a political stalemate that furloughed NASA's communications department at the exact moment the most important image in modern history was supposed to be released. A coincidence just like the 9-degree alignment with the WO signal, just like the nickel without iron, just like the Fibonacci sequence. The coincidences are starting to pile up, but the Mars flyby is over. Now the object is at perihelion and there are other observers. The JUICE mission. Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer is perfectly positioned. It will observe 3I Atlas in November, just as it emerges from the sun's glare, getting the best view of the comet in its most active state. NASA's Juno spacecraft will get its chance in March 2026 during the Jupiter flyby. And then there is Europa Clipper. This might be the most important observation of all. A new prediction from European researchers has identified a rare and fortuitous alignment. NASA's Europa Clipper spacecraft, currently in cruise mode on its way to Jupiter, is about to fly directly through the tail of 3I Atlas. Let me say that again. We are not just going to look at the comet, we are going to sample it. Comets have two tails, the dust tail, which is bright and follows the comet's orbit, and the ion tail, which is fainter, made of charged particles, and always points directly away from the sun, pushed by the solar wind. Between October 30th and November 6th right now, Europa Clipper is aligned perfectly with the sun and 3I Atlas. It is in position to be pummeled by the charged particles from the comet's ion tail. This is an opportunity beyond anything astronomers could have dreamed of, a direct sample of material from another star system. We can use Europa Clipper's instruments to taste the tail. We can directly measure its composition, see if it contains nickel ion or complex organic molecules. We can finally get a definitive answer. This is the closest we can currently get to a direct sample of a different part of the galaxy. But there is a problem. Europa Clipper is in cruise mode. Not all of its instruments are activated. To make these measurements, scientists on Earth need to awaken the spacecraft, and they cannot because of the US government shutdown. The exact same shutdown preventing the release of the HiRISE image from Mars. The alignment window is between October 30th and November 6th. If the shutdown is not resolved by then, if the scientists cannot awaken Europa Clipper in time, the opportunity will be lost forever. The object passes, the tail dissipates, the alignment ends. We are at the brink of the most important scientific discovery in history, a direct sample of an interstellar object. And we are going to miss it because of paperwork. Unless this too is not a coincidence. What if the shutdown is the scripted narrative? What if the HiRISE image is being withheld not because of a furloughed communications department, but because it shows something that cannot be explained? What if Europa Clipper is being kept asleep? Not because of a budget dispute, but because someone is afraid of what it might taste in that ion tail. What if the shutdown is the perfect excuse, the perfect operational silence? We are now in the eclipse. 3. Atlas is behind the sun, silent, unseen. It has just passed perihelion, the moment of maximum velocity, maximum stress, maximum opportunity. When it emerges in a few weeks in early December, we will face one of two realities. Reality 1, the comet. The object will reappear exactly where the laws of gravity say it should be. It will continue on its hyperbolic path, fading as it heads toward Jupiter and then out into the void. The signal will not return. The anomalies will be explained away as unusual but natural cometary chemistry. Scientists will write papers, Skeptics will say, "I told you so," and Three-Eye Atlas will become a fascinating footnote in the history of astronomy. Reality 2, the visitor. The object will not be where we expect it. It will have slowed down. Its trajectory will be changed. It will be on a new bound orbit. The signal will return perhaps with a new message, perhaps on a new frequency. The high-rise image will be released or it will be buried forever, and we will be forced to accept the truth. We are not alone. The object in our solar system is not a rock. It is a vessel. It is under active intelligent control. We do not know its intentions. We do not know its capabilities. We do not know if it is a scout, a colonist, or a hunter from the dark forest. But we will know definitively that humanity's place in the cosmos has changed forever. There is no middle ground. There is no maybe. The test is coming. For 35 days we wait. We listen to the silence. We prepare for the moment when Three-Eye Atlas emerges from the shadow of the sun. The countdown has begun. This exploration of Three-Eye Atlas represents humanity's attempt to understand the unknown through observation analysis and open inquiry. The signal at 1420 MHz, the Fibonacci pattern, and the possibility of artificial origin remain hypotheses fascinating, worthy of investigation but unconfirmed. What we have documented here, real observations of an interstellar object reported anomalies in composition and behavior, claimed detection of structured radio emissions, multiple scientific interpretations from natural to artificial. Science acknowledges the extraordinary nature of these claims requires extraordinary evidence. Skepticism is not dismissal. It is responsible science. Pattern recognition can mislead as easily as it can illuminate. The truth may be simpler, stranger, or more profound than we imagine. In December 2025, new observations will provide new data. That data will help us understand. But understanding is a process, not a destination. For now, we observe, we question, we remain open to evidence wherever it leads. The universe is vast. The possibilities are infinite. And the story of Three-Eye Atlas, whatever that story ultimately reveals, is still being written.